Welcome back. Well, the former Health Minister, Dr. Zweli Mkhize, appears determined to put his name up for the presidency of the ANC at the party's December conference. This is despite that damning SIU report and the Hawks reportedly preparing to charge him for his involvement in the Digital Vibes scandal. We're joined now by Professor Stephen Freidman, the Director of the Centre for the Study of Democracy. Professor Freidman, good evening to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time this evening. Mkhize has a long history in the ANC. He's been the party's treasurer. He was the health minister at the start of the pandemic. Could he be a strong contender for the leadership of the ANC?
Hi, good evening, Stephen. Very short answer, absolutely not. First of all, it's by no means a foregone conclusion that he will be allowed to be a candidate even, because the amended step-aside resolution says that if you've been charged with an offence, you can't be a candidate. And as you did up intro, there's a very possibility that by the time December comes, he will be an accused person. But even if he somehow manages to get around that, and I'm not, well, that would really depend on him not being charged. I don't think he's a very strong candidate. First of all, I think, the only province so far which seems to have doubts about a Ramaphosa's second term is KwaZulu-Natal, which of course is where the enthusiasm for Zweli Mkhize is coming from. You've even had situations where figures who've been identified in the past with the opposing faction have been endorsing the current president. And secondly, we need to realize that life for the ANC has changed. We are no longer in the situation in which the ANC could be certain, it can't even be very confident of winning the next election. And if that is the case, then whether you can attract votes to the party becomes paramount. And I think the vast majority of ANC delegates would assume that Cyril Ramaphosa has a great deal more potential to attract ANC votes than Zweli Mkhize does.
In a way, this has always been Ramaphosa's biggest asset within ANC politics, hasn't it? His A-bomb, if we want to call it that he is still, slightly amazingly, the most popular politician in the country.
Well, the more important point, I think, for ANC people is that he's more popular than the ANC. So you don't want to trade somebody who's more popular than the ANC for somebody who has a cloud hanging over his head. I think the other point which needs to be made very forcefully, there are a lot of myths about South African voters, and one of them is that traditional ANC voters are sheep-like. Well, I don't think you could, I think less people would argue that after last November. But one thing we know about people who, in the electorate who the ANC would like to vote for them, is that they feel very strongly about allegations of corruption. When Jacob Zuma's expenditure at Nkandla was reached the media, the ANC lost Nkandla to the IFP. If you look at Northwest, when a Zuma faction premier was in charge, the ANC was losing by-elections in Northwest time and time again. When he was replaced by somebody who was supported by Mr. Ramaphosa, suddenly they started winning the by-elections. So, there's no doubt that somebody who's been involved in the Digital Vibes scandal, whether that leads to a prosecution or not, is not somebody who's going to be tremendously popular among voters.
Is there another angle to all of this, which, as I understand, part of Mkhize's point is he suggested that the SIU and other law enforcement agencies are running a sort of political smear campaign against him now. The SIU is responding to that in court papers in terms of the various applications before the courts at the moment about the SIU report into Digital Vibes. But we're in a situation where both the National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, and I would argue the criminal justice system as a whole, state publicly their leadership, that they're trying to show that they are legitimate. They're trying to regain their legitimacy. Now, once again, we'll have claims that these institutions are running political campaigns. Is this going to damage the ability of those institutions to regain their legitimacy?
No, I don't think it will, Stephen, because it's quite clear that the allegations are coming from people who have an axe to grind. There is no politician in this country who's charged with any sort of offence who doesn't claim that they're the victim of some kind of political conspiracy. The question in democracy is always what the voting public believe. I think election results and all the other pieces of evidence we have suggest that the public won't buy that. The legitimacy of those institutions would be far more compromised if there was a sense that they were not taking allegations of corruption seriously. Dr. Mkhize might feel that he's the victim of a conspiracy, but in fact, there's substantial evidence related to the Digital Vibes case. And I think that the broader public is aware of that evidence, and the broader public would see the fact that this is being pursued as a plus for the justice system rather than a negative.
So Ramaphosa, by my count, has already support from the leadership of the Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, the Eastern Cape, Limpopo. Do you expect this to sort of be a victory march? Is he going to be uncontested? Could it be that easy for him?
Well, he may well be. I mean, it looks like, if Mkhize is disqualified because he's on trial, the only other person whose name has emerged is Lindiwe Sisulu. And you will remember that she wrote a couple of op-ed pieces, which I think were a fairly clear attempt to project herself as an alternative to Ramaphosa. And all the indications are that that's fizzled out. It never really got off the ground. If you go back to 2017, she tried to project herself as a candidate for president as well, and that didn't get off the ground too. She simply lacks the constituency within the ANC to be a serious contender. So that leaves you with Ace Magashule, who's probably still going to be on trial, and a huge question mark. So it's not impossible that he'll be unopposed. But you may have seen recently that the Justice Minister, Ronald Lamola, was quoted as saying that there's now a consensus within the ANC that Ramaphosa will serve a second term. And I think that Lamola is pretty close to being right on this. The only province, as I say, who may not be part of that consensus is KZN, which obviously doesn't have the votes to outvote all the others.
Very interesting to see if Lamola ends up perhaps as deputy president, Professor. Could that be on the cards?
Oh, he's a serious guy. I think the only thing that might count against him, well, there are two things that count against him. The one is that I think that there's a push for a woman deputy president. And the other one is that he still may be regarded as too young. But he's certainly a politician on the rise.
Professor Stephen Freidman, Director of the Center for the Study of Democracy, really do appreciate it. Thank you.